where's the underpriced attention at the minute? Any creator out there, any business owner, any operator, where do you feel the underpriced attention is? I know you mentioned off cam that you're getting a videographer. I hope you don't mind me sharing this. You're going to start putting some more personal content out there. Where is the underpriced attention for creators at the minute?
Social media across the board. I just truly believe that whether it's Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all of these are still underpriced. I've been in the Instagram game for about 5 years at this point. And right now is honestly, even for us, the easiest time ever to go viral. 100K a month. Because I just felt like, yo, that's like $1 million a year run rate. That's pretty big. Yeah, when we hit that one and we hit it for like 6 months consistently, that's when I bought my first Rolex, because that was the biggest thing. Like the moment we do that, I want to go and kind of reward myself. Never wearing it in England because it's just like I'm scared.
I went a bit
Fair
wrong
assessment.
here. Yeah, I saved up like my first 5K and just went and spunked it straight on a Rolex like 8 years ago.
I suppose they're an investment, aren't they? As
Yeah,
well?
it's been an investment, but yeah.
That was just a big one, and I think now it's just like you just kind of get like, it's weird, but if you're competitive and you're in business, it's just never enough. It's almost like a bit of a disease, because you start to think like, oh, 200, and then like, you know, we used to see these goals and they used to be so big, and now we're just like, oh, this is like poverty territory. It needs to be like way bigger than that.
Yeah.
But it's fun at the same time.
A lot of people can, I'm sure you can piggyback off this, can benefit from the internet in terms of creating an income for themselves. I think it's important for the boys who are watching our audience. There's probably a lot of working class lads in there who can benefit from it.
Too fast, I'm bang. I just drop years for the gang. Catch me in the city, young nigga, 4 chains. Sign a CMG, still in the dope game. Outside 4 pain, really got it out the mud. Big 4 gang, catch me riding with the thugs, and I got it on my own. Ain't nobody help me. Remain humble, self right the dope ends. You can't little bro me, bitch. I really got a check.
We are rolling.
How did you find the lifting then? Is it you train a fair bit yourself then?
Yeah, I still train daily, and then I try to play like 3 times a week. Like tonight, I'm gonna be playing a paddle match, so I play like 3 times a week.
We need to look at this paddle game.
It's good. It's good fun. Yeah,
I think over here it's like badminton, tennis, squash.
Badminton is boring. Tennis, I do it obviously every week. Paddle is just fun because it's like something different. You get some alternatives out of it. So I quite like it.
I think I want to definitely give the audience a little bit of context.
Yeah,
I stumbled across your profile on Twitter. I've always been interested in the digital space. Nowhere near as far along as you, but sort of my background's been, people know network marketing, a bit more traditional, but always been keen to learn more about the digital space. I think a lot of people can, I'm sure you can piggyback off this, can benefit from the internet in terms of creating an income for themselves. I think it's important for the boys who are watching our audience. There's probably a lot of working class lads in there who can benefit from it. I think just to begin with, before we'll probably just conversate then, just a little bit of context to how you fell into the internet space, the digital world. I know you build brands. I'm sure you can elaborate on that, but just first and foremost, how did you find the internet and start creating a little bit of income for yourself?
Yeah, so I got into internet like more by accident. So I have a background in playing tennis professionally. So at the time I was in the United States, playing college tennis. So the college sports are pretty big there, and I got a scholarship to go study there, play sports online. Was my best line to go and actually go pro, because that was kind of the plan. And so I was in college, and you know, my dad comes from a very blue collar working class like background, did really well for himself, and he kind of instilled those principles in him. He was like, hey, look, my money's my money. You got to go earn yours and kind of make your own path. And so in college, I had my little stipend or allowance that I got. And so I started looking for ways to go make money, because I knew, okay, I can't get a job, right? Because the visa wouldn't allow it. And, you know, I'm too busy to go and like just teach lessons, because I played enough tennis. So I started looking for different ways to go make money. And so at the time, I really liked Instagram. I always had a fable for it. So I started looking around on it and came across like, oh, you can make money by like online. And so I started going down the rabbit hole of like, how can you make money? And eventually I came across like, hey, you can make money on Instagram. So I said, oh, it's pretty interesting. And I saw like obviously the influencers doing their influencing posts, but I also saw these little theme pages. So pages called Entrepreneurship Factor, pages called, you know, Marketing Mentor, that post infographics around like business, making money, like motivation, all that stuff. And so I realized, oh, they make money by posting content, growing an audience, and then selling digital products, ebooks, subscriptions, and all that stuff. And so that really fascinated me, because I felt like that was a really great way to make money, because you could work remote. And at the time, I kind of knew that I wasn't meant to go and sit in an office. That just wasn't my vibe. And so from that, really dove deep into it. Basically, every single time I wasn't spending over the court or with my girlfriend, I basically was working on that. You know, disregarded school completely, because it was just not very hard in America, to be fair. And so that's really how I kind of got started in the space.
Did you already have a business mind before you figured that out?
I always feel like I did. Like when I was like 10, 12, my friend and I, we lived like in a very central part in like Switzerland. And so what we used to do is we used to like roast like almonds or like roasted almonds. And so we used to like set up shop right outside and like sell them. And you know, it was very popular. Sometimes we'd like sell paintings or like we'd sell like, you know, just different stuff like ice cream, ice pops, whatever. And so I feel from a young age, I've kind of had that. I'd like string rackets for friends, like make some money there. But I think at the time it was more from a mindset of like, I like nice things, but I can't afford them. So I'll make money to buy them. And then obviously later on, I realized like, I don't quite like having people tell me what I want to do.
Agreed.
So like, I need to go and become my own boss type of vibe.
How hard did you find that transition? And try and dig into, you mentioned there that you felt you weren't cut out for it. Once you'd understood and made that decision, how long before what time frame for you making an income that you're happy with?
It took years.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue is with people, they'll want to make money and then they quit their job. I first came across this space like 2018. I got into this space. I didn't really start making real money, like more than 2K a month until like 2021 or like end of 2020. But the huge knowledge point here is I kept working on it, but I had a job on the side. So, you know, when I graduated college, that was 2019. I got a job. I got a job as an assistant coach in college, which gave me a stipend for a master's. And so that covered basically my basis. So I had like all the time in the world to get my master's, which would have got me a 100K a year salary. It got me the opportunity to work in my free time, and it still got me the pleasure of like being in tennis. So it got me the best of both worlds. And so by having a job and having the basis covered, I was able to use my free time and take some risks. I was able in weekends, I wouldn't go out and I would just work for 10 hours a day. Wasn't sexy, but it worked. Because I think if you go and like realize this, if you just go and quit your job and go all in, sure, for some people it works, but for too many people, it's too much pressure. Like I couldn't have dealt with the pressure of like, oh, I need to make this much money off of this thing that I have no clue about or not enough clue about, to then go and like pay for my rent at the end of the month. Like, no, thank you. So I think that's kind of it's not an easy transition, but I think it needs to happen gradually because you don't become an entrepreneur overnight.
Yeah.
You become an entrepreneur through like repetition.
Were you able to switch off? You left your job how long ago?
4 months.
I'm sort of still lost in client services, but it pays so well that it's very difficult to walk away from. It's something that I've built up over years, probably a decade now. So it's very difficult to walk away, but I've always been enthralled by the digital space. How easy was it? This is a selfish question. How easy was it for you to switch off when you were working the job? Did you always know this is just a necessary evil for me to be able to
Yes.
kick this off on the back end?
Yeah, but also I'd never looked at it as a necessary evil. I always enjoyed it because I did it something I enjoyed. I wouldn't do something I don't enjoy unless it pays really well. But even for me, I knew, okay, I give tennis lessons, which makes me like 50 to 100 quid per hour in like Silicon Valley. So I was like, okay, I can do that. And I just knew that this is the money I can use for this. And then over time, I just started looking at like, okay, you know, the moment I hit this benchmark of my online business, I'm gonna decrease the hours by 10% and then just gradually like worked it up and down. I don't think it's necessarily like you kind of do it as a necessary evil, but you just do it until you have like some form of safety. Because I think especially right now, like, you know, post-pandemic, inflation and all that stuff, I think it'd be just silly giving up something that already pays well. But it's just more like making the sacrifices on the personal side in terms of like going out, like, you know, the fun stuff type of vibe, to go and put that time into the business. And then once it really takes off, you make the leap.
How have you found the ability to be your own boss now you've left the working world alone? Has that been difficult for you?
Well, you just said there you did yours more strategically and you dropped it down by percentages, and you just mentioned that it's because you were enjoying what you were doing. You're doing the sport you love, you're teaching that, whereas I was doing a job I hated. So mine were less strategic. It was more like, once I've realised that I'm earning more than what this job's giving me, and I understand that if I put more time and effort into this thing, it's going to feed me more money anyway. But the thing that I've struggled with is the adapting to the self-employed life, because I've always been employed. So it's when you're comfortable, you've got a nice house, you're getting good income. It does slip off a little bit, but I'm just starting to grab hold of it now. But the fact that we're juggling other things around as well, it is tough for me at the moment. But
I think it's tough because for me, I knew that my hard stop was gonna go and be in summer. However, at the time, like our agency, so that was like summer 2021, our agency was at about like 10, 15, 20K a month. I gotten a job offer through like friends that was going to be Fortune 500 company, you know, like a brand manager, 20K a month salary. It was amazing. So for me, that was very tempting, right?
How
to go
hard
and
is that?
take.
How hard is that to turn down?
It was hard, and I was actually not going to go and turn it down because, you know, I was confident that it was going to be the same as like working in a job. And I think it would have been cool to go work at a, you know, Fortune 500 company, like make a good money, get everything covered, live in the States. Pretty cool. But that month, our business went and crossed like 50K. So I was like, okay, that's the same money. But with this, I'm doing it part-time and I'm just scratching the surface. And so at that point, I knew that, okay, I enjoyed this way too much and not go and pursue it full-time. But I knew that the hard cutoff was going to be when I finished my master's, because that's when my like tennis job evaporated anyways. And so that's when I kind of made that jump, which made it easier for me.
What do you mean by Fortune 500?
One of the biggest companies in
One of the big companies.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I had an internship lined up before COVID at Facebook.
Yeah.
It wasn't Facebook, but like, yeah, I had like a one of the bigger beverage companies like can offer me like a brand manager position.
How had they seen you there just through your work online?
It was a mixture between, at the time I was already posting content on social, between that and networking. So I had like a friend of mine, a friend of the head coach I was working for. She actually like was working in like a big like beverage company. And one of her friends was working at that Fortune 500 company and was looking for someone. And she was like, oh, hey, one of the guys I know, he runs like a marketing agency. And they're doing some good stuff for social media branding. So the person checked me out, and then she saw some of the stuff I'd posted and was like, wow, it actually would be a great fit, because they struggled on the social side of things in terms of monetizing that aspect, or like, you know, driving more exposure. And so that's how she hit me up, and, you know, ended up obviously declining. But it just shows a fraction to what I've alluded in the first part, which is like the internet's really changing the game.
That just goes to show that it doesn't matter how many followers you've got or how big your following is. Like, I know, what's your Instagram got? 1,300? Something like that. But you've managed to... Well, first of all, just tell me how you've figured out that you've used the low amount of following to convert it into...
Yeah, so I think to give some more back context, so at the time, obviously, as I mentioned in the beginning, I started growing these little theme pages. And, you know, when COVID hit, I kind of went all in on that, because I was not working, because obviously wasn't able to, was just doing school 2 hours a day, and that 20 hours in a day, or like 16 hours in a day to go and work. And so I really focused on that, and I realized quickly that like this emerging infographic like / online education space is really taking off. And so I noticed, there's a lot of people that sell courses, sell coachings, but they don't have an audience. And I knew how to grow an audience, like barely. And so I realized I could sell this as a service. So I started selling it as a service. And then from there, obviously turned that into a whole agency. And one thing I've learned early on is like, okay, a lot of people are good at getting followers, like getting the people in. But obviously, if you go to your landlord and you're like, hey, I have 50,000 followers, he's not going to go accept that as like rent payment, right? And a lot of people get stuck into this like, oh, I have this many followers, but how can I make money? And so they try just like copy paste what everyone else is doing, but they don't understand the marketing and like sales process behind it. And so I think that's really what we've carved out in terms of, I don't really measure like how many followers we gain. Yes, that's a metric that we really aim for. But what more I'm looking at is like, what content attracts the most followers? For example, you can go and talk about like, hey, here's 7 investing tips Elon Musk's used. That's going to attract poor people, and it's not very personal. However, if I go and talk about like, well, let's pretend I had a daughter. My daughter is never going to have to work a day in her life. When she turns 18, she's going to go and have X amount of money in her portfolio. Here are the 7 investments I'm making for her. That is going to hit much harder, right? And it's going to get people, families, like, you know, single moms, single dads that are like, I want to learn how to invest like you. That is going to convert a lot more in terms of audience monetization than somebody that just posts like, here's 7 investments like Warren Buffett made. So it's kind of that differentiation of like, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. It matters who follows you and how strongly you're connected with them. For me, a lot of the followings I have a small following, but they're all business owners. They're very targeted. And the stuff I talk about is very specifically for them. And so therefore, we have a lot of clients that come through my personal brand for our agency service that we can close on big deals, which is how my small audience is able to convert at a very decent rate, I'd say.
In terms of the setup there, so you've got the agency going, you've got a skill set that you can help these people with, it's reciprocal in what you're doing. How were you setting that up? What did you mention there? There's a setup fee or a retainer?
So the way we do it is, at first, when we started out and we had no clients, we basically just went like, hey, look, work with us. We're taking whatever we bring in, we take a cut off of that. And then, you know, from there, pretty much like we did that. Over time, we started adding like retainers. Like, hey, we charge this much per month, which is like the base fee of just working with us. It's a financial commitment. And then everything that we make you, we're taking a cut of that. So for example,
you get to look at their books and stuff. I'm trying to like dig deep into
no,
it.
so that was the biggest struggle early on. So we tried to like, we just let them track the sales. And so they report to us. But then we had like some dumbass who ended up under-reporting by like 2.5 million because you didn't want to pay us a percentage.
Just a little 2.5 mil.
Just, yeah, in like, over the span of like a year.
All right.
And so that would have been like, that would have been at 300 grand in like commissions for us, which is like a lot of money. But over time, we now have a COO who like tracks everything. So he tracks all the calls that are being booked, all the sales that are being booked. So we have access to like all the internal infrastructure, you know. And now with some of the newer clients, we actually set up the payment process and we set up the Calendly link. So like we know every penny that comes in and goes out. So
You'd like to think it could be a handshake that if you're benefiting their business, it'd be reciprocal. But I'm sure there'll be some rogues out there that try and.
We've had that very big approach, and it's honestly worked out for like 80% of clients. We had like, and it's always the funny ones. It's always the business mentors that want to show you how to build a business and like how to use organic marketing that go and screw this over. Like we have a lot of these big guys who are like, you know, just below the Hormozy level, who are like byproducts of what we've done for them. And they'll just go and either sell our service or like there'll be the guys that like argue every penny that you need to pay them. But they in return expect their customers to pay high ticket prices, which I just find, you know, funny.
You guys were talking quite a bit off camera regarding OnlyFans. What's your perspective on that as a platform for people to make money?
I think there's obviously opportunities in there, right? I think for me, it's always been a platform like I kind of stayed away from. And so I'm not too familiar with it, right? Like when you told me that you were using it to post gym videos, I found that very interesting. Because for me, it was more like the sex selling platform.
Oh, he
where,
does
like,
that as
you go-
well?
Yeah, I know. But like when he's like, oh, I was actually starting out doing like the gym content. I
Is
was
that what
like,
you started doing?
Yeah.
and I was like, that's interesting. You know, so I think it's there's definitely opportunities out there, you know, and I think it's more like what every person for themselves needs to go and make for it. For me personally, like I would probably not feel comfortable doing it or like do it myself. However, I know it's a great opportunity for people. And I think it's more like on a per person basis, like, hey, are you cool with doing it? Or like, do you actually enjoy doing it? But I do know, especially for a lot of females, it is a very lucrative career.
Were you toying with? I know you got speaking regarding the agency model versus the coaching of an actual member of the public who's going to go with an OnlyFans. Do you feel just from speaking already that the agency could be a way to monetize it?
Obviously, the initial idea was to build a program, which I'm halfway through doing, 8-module video on how creators can go from scratch, not knowing anything about OnlyFans, to being able to match and beat whatever the salary is, the monthly salary. That's the goal for them, like I did.
See, I think here's my take on it, because I'm really living this like online industry. A lot of people look and think, oh, it's cool, an online course. But here's the issue. One, a lot of people will not take action on the information that they learn because they're either lazy, they're scared to go and take it, or they're just overwhelmed, right? I was overwhelmed. I didn't take action a lot of the times. So what you sometimes want to do is really do hand guiding. And the second thing is, it's not as lucrative. If, let's say your program is priced at £500 or like £1,000. Now to go and make $1 million, you need to go and sell 2,000 to 1,000 units every single year, right? Now to make that same amount of money, like that means you need 100 customers every single month. Now you can also do that if you go and help 10 creators generate $1 million per year, or like, you know, you help 20 creators generate 500,000 per year, which, you know, as sad as it kind of is, it's very easily doable, right? If you can go and do that, you just take a percentage off of that and you're way ahead of the game already. And so I just like to think that it's like long-term wise, it's so much more lucrative because the whole modules that you're creating for the course, they're actually just trainings that you can have your team go through. Because now what happens is you go and train your team on how to do it. They can take care of it. So over time, you're sort of like just like the branch that gets people through the door, and it's kind of like the credibility standpoint. And then like, you know, that's what we're working on right now. We want to train our team up to the point where they can deliver like my business partner and I. And so that over time we can, you know, kind of just be supervising and troubleshooting and focus on like adding one or two other ventures in, and the team really takes care of the day-to-day. So that's my perspective on it.
So would you recommend more using these 8 videos to sort of train an account manager up on how to run an account, and then bring these creators in, whether it be male or female, say that this guy I've just trained up is going to do everything for you? He's going to take a percentage. You can run your social media. Do you think it's more successful that way?
Yeah, 100%. Because at first, yes, you'll have to go and do it yourself. You go and manage them. You show them the ropes and everything. Once you have proof of concept, you just turn everything that you've done into like a training where the account managers go through, they do it, you approve the work, and you just at first work very closely with them so they're like up to the standard, right? But you know, I think especially like a lot of our clients, for example, if I just gave them a course, here's how you go grow your audience, they'd be overwhelmed because it's a lot of steps, there's a lot of like psychology. I think it's the same in your realm, right? If you show these people, they're overwhelmed, they'll delay stuff. Whereas if you have someone who's paid to go and do it and needs to get it done in 3 days, he'll go and get it done. And then that's kind of
An almost done for you strategy.
Exactly. And then that way they're also like, you're only you're incentivized to help them. So if they make money, you make money, which means like they're happy to go and pay a cut because they don't need to do a bunch of stuff that's hindering them. Like I've spoken to some people who are in this space and they've seen that like a lot of the creators are very lazy. And I see this across the board. Like some of our clients are very lazy. And so we need to like get on them. And because we get on them, they'll make money. And that's why we take a nice percentage. Same with you.
So before I even launch this agency, what you're recommending for me is then this 8-video package. Don't try and get people to use it whatsoever. Okay.
I would honestly like. I'm a big proponent. I'm a big advocate for like agencies.
Yeah.
Because it's more, to me, long run, it's more scalable. Sure, like if you're really good at marketing and everything, you can sell a course like crazy. But like really long term, if you have like, let's call it a model or like a talent agency, right? That's what like some people call it. You have a talent agency, you get people and you take a percentage. Once you're really able to like train these people, or like you do it yourself first, and then once you've really nailed it down, you bring an account manager in, and then over time you have more account managers. You can go and expand to 30 to 50 like account managers. If you have 50 account managers who each handle 10 models, you have like 500 talent scouts, they'll go and get people, onboard them, manage them, they make money. It all trickles down. Now you have 500 people that pay you. Let's say they pay you $1,000 a month in fees because they don't really make money. That's $500K a month. That is selling 5,000 to 10,000 copies a month, a year, like a month. To me, that's crazy. And so like, that's where I think it's just so much more lucrative to go and actually like run up the numbers there.
Nice. That's today's mission.
That's
then.
maybe something me and you could do as well there.
100%.
I'll tell you what I'll ask now, switching gears a little bit. Where's the underpriced attention at the minute? Any creator out there, any business owner, any operator? Where do you feel the underpriced attention is? I know you mentioned off cam that you're getting a videographer. I hope you don't mind me sharing this. You're going to start putting some more personal content out there. Where is the underpriced attention for creators at the minute?
Social media across the board. I just truly believe that whether it's Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all of these are still underpriced. I've been in the Instagram game for about 5 years at this point. And right now is honestly, even for us, the easiest time ever to go viral. Because what's happening is Instagram's algorithm hasn't changed over the past 5 years. The only thing it's done, it's made it harder for bad content and crappy content to rank. So if you create great content that people like, are engaged by, educated by, and or want to share with their friends, you're going to go viral. But the stuff that goes viral goes really viral. We right now have a post for a client that's, literally quadrupled the likes it got in the past 4 days. And it's like at 30,000 likes. And so we're going to go probably run that one up to well over 50,000 likes. It's going to drive 10,000 new followers. And off of that 10,000 followers, he's likely going to rake in about 100 to 150K in sales. And so it just, to me right now, the most underpriced stuff is Twitter, because I think Elon's just doing some really good stuff. It's TikTok, because you get a lot of like organic reach if you post a lot. But ultimately, those two platforms, they all play into the kingpin, which is Instagram. Instagram, great organic reach, but ultimately the best feature it has is the monetization. The ability to monetize is unparalleled.
Explain that, dig deeper into that for me.
So TikTok, for example, great platform to go viral, crappy content for community engagement. Twitter, great platform for like just engaging, community building, crappy to get like mass exposure, although it's great, really crappy to go and make sales because like the DMs are just dog. But if somebody messages you, it bumps everyone down. Instagram, you can filter down everything. Instagram is the great best of all things. You have the posts on the feed where you can see, but you also have the stories. So when I come on the pod, I post a picture of it, right? People go and see it. If I go and have a really bad day at work, I can talk about it. I can like, hey guys, really bad day. I can be really authentic and raw. And that's really what connects with people, right? People connect with like us being raw, us sharing wins, us sharing the lifestyle and everything. And that connects with them. And if they respond to it, And like you can actually foster those conversations, whether it's you doing the responding, whether it's an actual sales rep that, you know, is just in your account responding to. You can foster those relationships. And right now, I think with the way advertising works, you got to go and have these like relationships at first for someone to go and buy. That's why for us, for example, we outperform all the Facebook ad agencies because they're just doing direct response. Hey, if you want to make this, buy my program. For us, it's, hey, look, here's the situation I was in that you can relate to. And, you know, I'm just like you. I'm at the gym as well. And And so by the time they're so nurtured that when I'm like, hey, by the way, guys, if somebody wants to learn how I'm able to like, you know, like travel the world and like, you know, take care of my parents, like drop me a DM. A lot of people will be super incentivized to DM because they have that human-like connection and trust, because it doesn't feel like you're just, I paid to advertise to you. And so I think that different feeling is really what makes a difference.
So
right
there
now.
you mentioned, use that case study there of the guy who's gone a little bit viral and you deem is going to rake in 100K. What, just as an example there, what is he selling? And how would someone, I know you're an agency advocate there, you mentioned that, a creator who's building a following, enjoys making content, whether what we like, podcast, vlogs, whatever they're making, more lifestyle stuff, documentation of what they do that's their passion. What's the route to monetize it if they don't want to be build an agency? What other routes is there for monetization? Is that gentleman there who's built that?
So he, for example, he's a former cop, high profile cop in California. He started investing in ATMs. And so what he decided to do was like, oh, I'm going to show people how to go and start an ATM business because it makes passive income like pretty nicely. And so he basically has a program where either he finds a location and places the ATM for you, or he just shows you how to find locations and place them. And so he has a coaching program. And that works really well, right? Because obviously an ATM service business across the United States would be a nightmare to operate. But for him to sell the information and people making money, it's a win-win. But ultimately, when it comes to monetizing, I think it's more of a case of like actually studying the audience. I think I told you guys the story of this influencer at 2.6 million followers, wasn't able to sell 40 shirts because she tried to sell a women's clothing line to an audience that's 80% plus male. So when she then resorted to say something that was more like, I think it was either dating based or an OnlyFans, people were buying like crazy because that's what they were interested in. They were interested in, oh, I want to go and, you know, see private pictures, whatever, or I want to go and see dating tips to pick up, you know, females that look like you. And so I think that is really the trick, right? If for example, let's say you have an audience that's very fighting based, right? The trick would either be like, well, here's my fight camp training blueprint so you can get like in fight shape. A lot of guys would want to do that. You know, especially after Tate, a lot of guys want to be like, I can go and fight and like you get in the ring. That'd be an angle. Or if, you know, let's say you're someone who's a former, like let's say you're a former Wall Street expert. You might do, hey, I'll do one-on-one sessions with you and show you how to invest your money. Or here's a course where I outline how I trade the markets or, you know, stuff like that. So it's more like gathering the audience who actually follows you and what are their interests, and then finding the medium, whether that's subscription, course, coaching, you know, like whatever that you can monetize through.
That's interesting.
What's your thoughts on, basically my Instagram, I've got 50-odd thousand followers. It's hard to know who's who and who's interested in what. It's hard to narrow it down. Would you recommend for the agency starting a total different Instagram, or would you just say, stick to this, post everything on there, change up? Because at the moment I'm posting lifestyle stuff, which obviously I'm not monetizing. It's just trying to entertain people. And
Perfect.
Yeah.
You're building the brand, right? Like people don't buy a program, they buy you. So for example, people don't necessarily buy Twitter stock, or people don't get bullish on Twitter. People are bullish on Elon Musk, right? People don't buy Tesla for like its mission. They buy Elon because Elon's a genius. And so I think it's the same approach, right? You just document what you're doing. And let's say if you're framing it as like, hey, you know, OF has allowed me to go and do that, right? That's great. People will go and hit you up. Either then you have two options. You can talk to them and be like, hey, by the way, if you want to start, I can literally do it with you and manage you. Cool. Or, oh, do you want to get started? You know, like, here's a program that teaches you everything. You can do both. It can be a hybrid. Some people, they might want to do, hey, I want to head down for me, so I just need to be the talent. Or some people might want to do it in terms of like, I actually just want to learn it myself. And so it's kind of finding that one. But in terms of content, you want to make people like you first, because maybe you're not going to do OF for the rest of your life. Maybe at some point you're going to focus on like how to build a gym, or you're going to focus on like, hey, I'm a wine expert now, right? You just want people to like you and follow you for the stuff that you do with your life, so that whatever you do, you'll always have an angle to go monetize.
Yeah, if your passion changes or lifestyle circumstances, you can pivot and move, but you still built the audience. And you can still
Like, look at Gary Vee. He's bullish on wine at first. He started talking about wine. Then he was bullish about like the Giants, American football. Started talking about that. Doing flipping on markets, like sports cards. He talks about like the most random stuff.
I used to like his
social
car
media.
boots.
I used to like
Stuff
his
and that.
garage sale stuff. I used to.
Yeah.
That's what I enjoyed watching
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
And some people really enjoy the wine stuff. And so you can be very multifaceted, right? For me, once I start going broader, social media growth and monetization is going to be a part of it. A part of it is going to be like, being an athlete. A part of it is going to be like, like traveling, like straight up business stuff. A part is going to be like mindset. And so I think it's just covering the bases. Like a part is going to be like my interest in fashion. And so I think it's just covering different bases that are somewhat connected with each other, but all represent you. Because we've had clients that, we just had the other day, we had someone make a thread on like how being in a toxic relationship made him a millionaire. Talking about like how he was dating a chick.
Sounds like how my story's gonna go.
Like that's how like basically like
Yeah.
this chick was basically like abusing him, making him pay for like her child's like school, and then like was just basically like bossing him around. And then when he got out of that relationship, he like basically was red pilled, started to make different life choices, and that led to him being like a high working like sergeant and then making a ton of money. That sparked with so many guys in the DMs that were like, yeah, man, like, I feel like that just really was my clear to like, it was sad because it was like 10 guys like, I gotta go break up with my missus, which I kind of felt bad about. But then one of these guys actually reached out like a week later and was like, hey, man, I actually just was the first month where I was not in the red after the thingy, which is pretty cool, right? It was unrelated to business or anything. It was just his personal story / life that he spoke about that really resonated with the audience.
Resonation's the key there, and that's the key
Yeah.
takeaway. You need to be
100%.
relatable, and people can. And that's the hard part there. How dig into this? How hard do you think it is for someone getting started on social media? There's probably a lot of our followers out there who want to get started. They can see what we do, and they probably want to get involved in some way. The tough part for me, and I've said this to you a few times, is the ability to be truly authentic. And I think if you can do that and document that, you will always build a following. You mentioned there that he has a big following on Twitter, just for context, but let's just use the Instagram one there. The numbers don't really matter because you want raving fans. And if that numbers, we sometimes moan about our views. Let's just say we've only got, some have got 30,000, some might have 500, 600, 700. But if you put 500, 600, 700 people focused in anywhere, if you did an event, a physical event, and 500 people showed up, fuck me, that's a good event to hold. So I think it's understanding that it's the quality of the following. And then if they're resonating with you, the monetization should naturally occur then if you've got the right product, service, whatever you might be doing.
And just having a long-term outlet on it, right? I think a lot of people make two mistakes. One, they're really scared to put themselves on camera because they feel like, oh, what if Joe Schmo, hates on me? Which, fair enough. What happens? Worst case, like Stranger Weirdo 67 said that your teeth are wonky. Cool, nobody cares. If that's the worst thing that happens, that's cool.
Ellis is going around to the house, so that's the only thing. We've got to control this,
But that's the first thing,
Yeah,
right?
I buy too much.
What did you say again? No, but that's the one thing that people are so scared. We're like, if I do something and that's the worst thing that can happen, that's fine.
Yeah.
If it means that somebody will literally come and like beat up me and my entire family, fair enough. I might not do it, right? But like at the same time, like the second thing is they think, oh, I posted 10 videos and it didn't go viral. And I think it's just drawing it out into perspective. Mr. Beast posted like 300 plus videos before he hit 10K subscribers, right? Like a lot of cases such as that. And you just got to realize that like, one, don't talk about how to do things, talk about how you did stuff.
Agreed.
Like for example, not here's how you get in fighting shape. Here's the training plan I use to get in fighting shape, and then basically you put in brackets only to get knocked out, which is like, it's super funny, and then that builds authority. So I think it's more like, for a lot of people, if you want to create content, write down like, where am I today? What have I accomplished? What are things that I have more knowledge on than the average person, and why is that? And so you take those leverage points and you create content around it. Then you just make it interesting, right? Let's say you're really good at babysitting, Here's how you put a kid to sleep in under 10 minutes. A lot of parents will find that attractive, right? And then you just start talking about it. Maybe over time, your first product then is going to be, here's the babysitter manual, right? Here's how you can go make sure that the little kid's in bed by like 7 or 8 so you actually can have time with your spouse.
Mm.
A lot of people would buy that.
Rule number 1, give child 5 spoons of Calpol.
Yeah, that'll make our Calpol though. That's why I'm like I am.
Do you think it's a good idea to widen your spectrum on that sort of thing?
Yeah.
So even if it's not your niche, but you find something that you did well that people can resonate with, just
100%.
go for it.
I personally just haven't done it yet. I'm just more focused on just really dominating the niche, but that's just because the business I'm in. Over time, that's 100% what I'm doing. Because like, look at like Elon Musk. He just trolls people over random stuff. But because it's Elon, people find it interesting. But for people to find it interesting, they obviously got to first resonate with Elon in the first place. But yeah, I think there's a lot of there's for example, Gary Vee talking about like passion. Like that's an interesting topic, I think it's just a good balance. First, you want to go and have your niche specific content that people resonate with, and then you add more broadening stuff. Because when you have the OG people that roll with you, they'll engage with that and actually make the broader message more relevant.
What do you believe to Gary Vaynerchuk's thesis on document versus create?
100%. I like the document aspect a lot. It's something I regret a lot because I sometimes think, I don't have a cool story because it wasn't like, I was borderline homeless and now I'm like making money. But I actually like the fact a lot that he talks about documenting. I wish I would have documented more because I think there's a lot of cool nuances that now would be so valuable in terms of sharing. And so I think it's definitely cool. And even if it's just like, oh, hey, I just signed my first client, or, oh, hey, I just made my first $2,000 a month, and fast forward to now, that'd be such a movie. And I think it's very recommendable.
We were speaking about McGregor downstairs and he documented his, that was just the one to watch.
Yeah.
He's polarizing figure, but the ability to watch. Have you watched the new one on Netflix? Fantastic. And his previous one, I think we'll call Notorious, equally as good to see the rise, the highs and the lows, what he pushed through to get where he is. It's
Why do people find it interesting, right? Let's say the Conor McGregor documentary, for example. The reason I find it interesting because it shows you the actual road from recovery back to fighting. It shows you the lead up to a fight. It really shows like these small nuances where like he's frustrated in the gym, where he has a little ankle issue and like he's like almost crying, and like you have all these little moments that make him relatable and human, where it's like, oh wait, he's not just here because he's like some god. He's doing the same thing that I did. He's just either done it longer, or, oh, he does this and this, and I'm not doing this. And so it's like, it gives you these little contrasts where you actually realize what it takes to see it win. And I find that very interesting.
Yeah, it's the ability there to resonate because McGregor's the same age as me. As he was coming through the ranks, you just saw like this wow. Like,
I think that first documentary as well, where he comes from, he was a plumber. He was getting bills that he wasn't paying his rent. He was going to get kicked out, and he was back at his mum's and they were scrimping and scraping for scrambled egg on toast and stuff like that. And then if he'd have not documented that, like it's like, let's say if someone documented Mike Tyson's journey back then, imagine that sort of documentary. But you always say to me it's about documentary.
well, I think documenting, even though you can procrastinate on documentation, it's the easiest thing to do because it's being you. A lot of people out there probably can't initially, either they don't have the skill set or the knowledge base to try and create all the time. It's quite a difficult agenda. That like, what should I post? How should I post it?
I would literally just post like thoughts and opinions because I think, and obviously you got to learn how to formulate yourself. But I think the biggest mistake you can do is not post something. A lot of people will have stuff to say, but they won't post because they're like, whoa, it's not relevant, or, oh, this might be embarrassing. Like I know people that go make like, 20K a month and they're like really happy, but they're like, it's nothing because I'm not making 50K a month, right? But like, it is relevant because if you can then later on get to like 50 or like, you get from 1K to like 3K, like you want to be able to show that. And I think it is interesting, but people are like, oh, wow, he just kept doing this and now he's over here. Like it shows that gap. And I think it's just sometimes it's again, zooming out. Hey, will this be relevant like 2 years from now? Yes, probably. And then, just kind of continuing to do it.
You mentioned you're going to hire a videographer. What's the play and what's the goal with that?
I think the goal is just that sometimes, like, for me, it's hard. Like, I don't like to go and try and sit down, like, do all this purposeful stuff. I know it's a necessary evil in a sense, but I like to really just go and, like, have someone just catch me in the moment. Because I feel like for me, even though that's what I do for a living for clients, the moment the camera turns on, sometimes I just, like, tighten up.
Yeah.
When it's, like, an actual, I need to say these things. But I'm very sarcastic and, like, I would say I have quite a big personality. And so I want to catch that aspect. I want to catch how when I talk to clients, like sometimes roast them, or like, I want to say how I like talk to other people about the stuff that we're doing or how I'm thinking, or like just, having that like in the car ride, like, hey, why are we going here? Or what are you doing right now? Having that little aspect where you can talk, because I think that's very interesting. Like you will not go and hear like the best content that I consume is just like the big entrepreneurs like going in their cars and like talking about the stuff they're doing and then catching the best excerpts.
You like Grant Cardone?
I love him. Yeah, I think he's just so funny how delusional he is. And again, right, just hearing like there's the stories of him where he just sits there and he's just like putting like 20 call to actions every single day, and somebody texting him like, "Oh, hey Grant, like you gotta stop pitching all the time because otherwise I'm gonna unfollow you." He's like, "Well, great, unfollow me because you're not gonna buy anything anyways." Like it's so like
His
it's basically-
method's promote. That's just his
which
game.
I don't necessarily agree with. However, again, his success, contradicts that. But it just goes to show, like, again, he doesn't care how many followers he has. He cares that he has customers who follow him.
Yeah.
So I think that's
He's
kinda
changed
interesting.
over the years. So if I like reverse back to probably my first mentor, because he was from car sales and then was teaching closing, and that was sort of his niche at the time. He's moved through like investing, Scientology. The
And
list
have you
goes
seen
on.
his current content?
Is 10x Health? Is he pushing that a lot? I've
Well,
seen it.
but I think I will say that 2028 he's gonna run for president.
Okay, presidency.
Because now he's switching to a lot of like political content.
Yeah.
And I like again whether he
I
makes
saw
it
him
or
push
not.
one on Kim Kardashian this morning.
Yep. And so I think he's going to make that next step. But again, the audience that was there for the car salesman, they still rock with him. Because car sales, like real estate, investing, it's all somewhat connected. And then the leap into politics is just a more broader spectrum.
Yeah.
But he's going to, if I go make the same content as Grant Cardone or Alex Hormozy does around business or like politics, I'm going to get 100th or 1000th of the view because I'm not those people. Because they've built their authority up through the car sales, the gym stuff, and all that stuff. Them saying this has more weight because they have the authority behind it, whereas I just lack that authority.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting aspect of
How
it.
do you grow that then? What's the play there?
It's a consistency.
Time.
It's a consistency of right. For example, let's say you want to talk about like, let's say for me, I'm talking about social media. I'm not going to talk about social media growth, social media monetization, how to build a brand. Like I'm going to talk about all these things. Over time, I'm probably going to talk about like how we grow our agency, right? How we're making money, like how I'm using that money. And then because I have the authority of like he knows how to grow and monetize, the next step for someone who grows and monetize is to build a business, right? And for someone who builds a business, the next step is going to go and be how do I invest? And so I will be able to broaden that up a bit because once I have the authority there, if they go and see, oh, did this, I'll be able to push the more like mass market type content that's going to go and resonate with people, which I think that's the play over time.
I want to go back to that Instagram post that you said. Did you say it got 30,000 likes? You want it to get 50,000? What's the process there? So let's say if I post a picture and it does really well, are you boosting them posts? Are you trying to? How are you marketing that post to grow organically?
So what we do is we usually use influencers, so like these theme pages, like they're just like faceless pages.
Yeah.
That post around like business stuff. So we give them the post. And we're like, hey, post this for us and tag our client. That's how they
and you
grow
pay them
followers.
for that?
We pay them for that. It's like influencer marketing basically. But normally, like for people who are like not in the actual business, make money online space, what I usually suggest is like, yeah, if a post does really well, let's say like it goes semi-viral, I would go and run Facebook ads behind it to boost the awareness because it's going to go drive in more followers. And once you have the audience, you kind of control the audience because you can sell to them or market to them every single day. And that's something that I personally really roll with because I think it just gives you more leverage.
So let's say if what I do with the OnlyFans and maybe somewhere along the line we'll do a training program or like you just said then how to get fight ready in 6 weeks or whatever. And I come to you as an agency and say, what can you do for me? What service can you provide? What sort of work would you do with me?
Yeah, so we basically go take over the entire content spectrum. So we basically go and do, the Twitter threads, we kind of map out some of the reels, handle all the posting. And then on the back end, we just kind of make sure like, hey, here's what you need to go and say on your stories, right? Here's how you need to go and promote the whole thing. And then we kind of take it from there. And then from there, it's a very simple process where like you obviously need to handle the sales aspect of things, but we'll handle the promotion in terms of like, hey, we'll pick the pages, we'll set up the promotions, we'll go and boost everything. And then your aspect is just really, we'll bring in the leads and you just need to go and close them. So I think that's really the game.
How deep do you go into? I sell most of my motorhomes through Facebook. My avatar, my audience is 50 plus. I can find them very easily on Facebook. How deep? I don't want to go too complexities and system stuff, but how deep do you go into the ads manager? You mentioned the awareness. See, I'm so deep into Ads Manager, it's unbelievable. Like lead forms for me is
great.
unbelievable for the price point. I can get a callable number for 50 pence.
That's good. I mean, we don't use ads managers at all because we obviously use the influencers. But yeah, like from the Facebook ads guys that I know, the lead forms are amazing because again, right? It's you don't want to acquire necessarily customers. You want to acquire leads.
Yes.
And if you can go and get a lead, you can outbound call them,
Yeah.
which is something I think a lot of people are unwilling to do because that's like this stupid.
That's my
COVID
business model. It's
generation.
generate leads, free closers, repeat.
Yep.
Do-
The better you are at outbound and the better you are at consistent following up and like maximizing the leads, that's really the game plan.
What? Let's change gears a little bit. You mentioned a lot of business here. I can see you're a motivated guy. What is your North Star? What's the end play? What makes you happy?
It's a game. I think for me, it's just playing the game of business. Like, you know, obviously come from a background of like wanting to play tennis professionally. And so for me, one, I still want to compete a lot, like whether that be on the tennis court, but I like competing in the business realm as well. So I think we want to milk out the agency, you know, get it to like 500 to $1 million a month, and then add more agencies, like build a media company. Like I just want to build different business. I really enjoyed that aspect. I think since I was a kid, I really enjoyed playing the Legos, you know, building something and then like building different things and like playing around with them. I just enjoy that aspect of it. And so that's really my motivation. Is kind of like, yes, of course, the financial comes along the lines, but it's one, being really able to build different things. And two, as well, having the freedom over time of like doing stuff, like going on trips, experiencing the world, like, you know, doing stuff with my fiance. Like, I think that those are the really stuff that I enjoy. You know, like, for example, today we're going to go play some paddle, you know, competing together. Then we'll go have some good food, you know, and being able to go, we'll just go into a restaurant and like, just like, you know, I sometimes here forget to like actually double check stuff because it's just like, it's fine, right? Like financials are taking, I think that feeling of like, I can go to a restaurant and I don't even really check the bill or the menu, what something costs. I think that feeling is pretty nice.
Freedom, that, isn't
yeah,
it?
because it gives you that sense of freedom. You know, not saying, wow, like I'm a multimillionaire. No, not at all. But just that small sense of like, hey, I can go and take my fiance to a nice meal, whatever restaurant I want, and I don't need to go and check the menu and have restrictions of what I can and can't eat to put, and you know, it doesn't affect really the way I live the next day. I think those are the small things that sometimes go unappreciated.
We can bleep this out if you don't want to disclose it. Was there ever a financial number that you aim for on the day you hit it? Can you remember that feeling?
Yeah, I think when I started out, it was, and you don't need to bleep it at all. My first real goal was to hit 10K a month, and I don't know why, but I just thought if like, yo, if you're
Is that take home or turnover?
Mate, at first it was like if you just have like 10K that comes into your bank account, I guess it was like take home. If you make 10K to go and take home, I thought that was you make it.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in California at the time. I was working as a tennis coach, and when I had that first 10K month, there's nothing that's ever gonna. I think, you know, making your first million feels pretty good, but like I think there's no feeling that beats it because it was the moment where. Oh my God, I go to the club and like, you know, you go to like, I went to
Let's go.
No, I remember I went out with like my roommate and I was like, hey, I'll pay for dinner today. And like, you just, it ascends you to a new level. It sounds really dumb, but I think the first 10K month, you start to feel like, oh, to the restaurants that you go at that level, you can afford it, right? You can go and get the Uber comfortable instead of just the Uber where like you have the dodgy drivers, right? You can go and like, you know, just kind of have that lifestyle. I think that was a really big one. And then the next big one was like 100K a month because I just felt like, yo, that's like $1 million a year run rate. That's pretty big. Yeah, when we hit that one and we hit it for like 6 months consistently, that's when I bought my first Rolex because that was the biggest thing. Like the moment we do that, I want to go and kind of reward myself. Never wearing it in England because it's just like I'm scared.
I went a bit
Fair
wrong
assessment.
here. Yeah, I saved up like my first 5K and just went and spunked it straight on a Rolex like 8 years ago.
I suppose they're an investment, aren't they? As
Yeah,
well,
it's been an investment, but yeah.
That was just a big one, and I think now it's just like you just kind of get like it's weird, but if you're competitive and you're in business, it's just never enough. It's almost like a bit of a disease because you start to think like 200, then like, you know, we used to see these goals and they used to be so big, and now we're just hitting, we're just like, wow, this is like poverty territory. It needs to be like way bigger than that, but it's fun at the same time.
It's a good driver as well.
It's funny that he mentions it's a game.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's how you've got to see it, and that's what will keep. If you're competitive, if you're a competitive individual, if you've played professional tennis, you're going to be competitive. And if you can see it as a game, when there's highs and lows or adversity in a sport, it's your stress tolerance there. Like how important. This has been toying in my head a long time because the business that I do next door, it's high stress. I've got to look after my sales boys. There's a demand for leads. There's a demand for expansion. As the owner sees expansion, he requires more and more and more. Dig into stress tolerance. Do you think you've got a high one?
Yeah, I think very high. I like, so growing up, my parents, they lived in two different cities. Like they were together, like they ended up splitting when I was like in college. But my dad, he had his own shop, so he was working a lot. My mom was in like the big city, like working, because that's where jobs were better. And I just always traveled back and forth, which, like, if you're like 6 years old, you're taking like trains back and forth. I think that was a bit unnormal, I guess, in Switzerland. But for me, I just always was like low-key stress tolerance. And in business, the same, right? Like now we got like a team of 7 that need to be paid. We have like 12 clients, and we just hold ourselves to a really high standard. And so you got to go meet that standard every day. Now you got to combine that with like your need to still be in shape, and you can't just be like ultra fat, right? Like obviously, like when you have like parents that want to go and see you, you have like a girlfriend or like fiance that wants to spend time with you and wants you to be present. And then your own desires as well, right? To do well, to do all that stuff. I think there's a lot of stress, but for me, I've just gotten so used to it where like, I don't really see it as stress. Like sometimes I have people around me that's like, oh, you should stop or you should take it easier. But for me, it's just like, no, like I'm used to it. Like I enjoy it. And again, it's just like, you can't expect to live up here and have your standards and work be here. Like I think, you know, a lot of people throughout this COVID and like throughout this entire like BS of the last 3 years have gotten really soft.
Made people lazy.
Lazy. Oh, it's so stressful. Oh, me. Like a lot of bullshit excuses. And that really pisses me off because like, you know, I just think of it back in the day, like when you go into like my fiance's father, he says this all the time. He's like, when you didn't go and bring home good schools, your dad would like, you know, find the branch and like whoop you with it. These days, if you go and like shout at your kids for like not doing the dishes or something, you'll have the school committee on your ass because you're emotionally destroying your kids. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like that stuff is really bad because it just creates like little morons. You know, for us, we're very generous. Like we incentivize our team and we take great pride in doing it too. But make no mistake, one of our guys, when he fucks up, he gets absolutely annihilated. And it's not just me being like, hey man, that was bad. It's, you know, sometimes if he catches me on the wrong foot, he gets cussed out and he gets absolutely battered. But at the same time afterwards, he obviously gets a solution too. And for me, it just like, you got to have a stress tolerance. If you can't handle stress, if like you're like one of those like little, you know, lip-tard like softy crops who like needs, you know, oh yeah, color your hair blue, you can have tattoos, you can choose your 17 pronouns and you still get the same amount even though you work half the time. You cannot expect to have a good life. Like if that's if that's what stresses you out, like you cannot expect to have a good life.
How do you think that's genetics? Have you worked on it? Do you do crazy things like ice baths and hard training and try and build that stress tolerance up?
Yeah, I think I've built it up from a younger age, and I think it you can always build it up, right? Like I'm big into that stuff. Like some people would say it's a bit psychotic, but like I just like doing that stuff. I like challenging myself because you cannot go and expect like, you know, like people who are overweight, right? Like how can they go from like overweight to being super skinny? It requires you like callous your mind, right? You got to go and like cold exposure, great, because it challenges you not to jump out when you're supposed to do. Right? Running is great because you can't just like, you know that you've given up. I think it's just small challenges every single day. You know, for me right now, it's how long can I stay without my phone? How long can I work in deep focus state without touching my phone? That's another, like for me, it's a disease that I have. I'm too, you know, all over the place. So I think it's just small challenges where you really build your stress tolerance.
So are you always testing your discipline then? Because we had this conversation. Well, we didn't have a conversation. You sent me a screenshot of like what is your business method? Is it full tilt constantly, recover if you need it, or is it like look after yourself on a morning and night, have a good routine so that you can smash it through the day?
It's hard, and that's not something I would say I'm qualified to speak on it because I haven't figured it out yet. But for me, what I've noticed is that there's sprints, right? When I'm here, I try to be more balanced, just because I want to be respectful as well to my fiance. And so I'm like, hey, look, I'm gonna just go and like at this time I'm sort of cut out. If something needs to be done, it gets done. When I'm in like Switzerland, it's just like I wake up, I take my time out to hit the gym, I have my time out like on lunch to hit a walk. But other than that, it's just I do what needs to get done to get to where I want to be. And I think, you know, there's gonna be spurs where that needs to go and get done. There was a time, obviously for me, it happened to be during COVID, where I was just 16 hours a day on it and I had no life and nothing else outside of it. Then over time, you start to like kind of build it out. So I think it is, you got to be willing to put in the work.
The work doesn't lie neither, does it?
No.
It's fruition and you see it on the back end, and that probably motivates you more, right? If I put X in, I'm getting Y.
But also I would honestly rather on a Saturday, I would rather be at my laptop writing threads and creating content than be at the bar, right? And I think that says a lot. If you find something that keeps you up at night but makes you enjoy it, that's when you're on the right track. If I was an investment banker and I had to go and look at numbers or like do accounting, yeah, I would hate it. And I would be like, oh, I want to only work from 8 or 9 to 5 and then do other stuff. But because I enjoy what I do, I'm a full believer that once you have that, you just got to do it as much as you can.
Do you consume much content?
Yeah,
do.
that's a key. If you want to learn how viral content
But
works,
it's all the content that you're going to learn from. You're not sat here
Looking at it
watching-
through a different lens.
You're not
not
sat
Yeah.
here watching girls twerk on TikTok and
no,
shit.
no, that's no. One,
why
I
you're
would get
going wrong,
absolute.
Josh.
I would get whacked.
What's that?
If,
So
if
that's
I
why
got
you're
caught
going.
looking at like girls twerking, I would get whacked across the face first.
What, by
of all.
your colleagues or by your missus?
No, by the missus, 100%. No, but it's just not interesting to me. Like I
Yeah.
just look at it like I want to look at like I like to look at like some dark humor pages and like some diverse pages because I think I look at content as like why does it go viral? How does this convert? And then the more you start to look at it, you start to spot patterns. Oh, this pattern interrupt works. Oh, this is a good hook. And then you start to think about like, oh, how can I use this concept or framework and apply it in the constraint of this business model or like for this like particular topic? And that's really how I train my mind. Like I've made the most progress by just looking at content and like kind of consuming it from there.
Who stands out to you at the moment? I'm new to the Twitter world, so but that's
I'm
probably
not
where.
much on Twitter. I'm more on like Instagram.
Is it? Twitter's been the place now, if I really think about it. It's where I probably a little bit on a morning, a little bit on a night, where I try and learn. I don't know. I just like that ability to read, and for some reason, I'm enjoying Twitter at the moment. I found
Yeah.
yourself on there. Is it Dan Coe? There's a few boys out there that I'm really like resonating with and listening to. Just
Yeah.
in terms of writing was never a strength for me. I can speak on camera, I can speak to people at length, I can do big presentations in public. But the digital space and Twitter especially, I've learned a lot from Twitter.
Yeah, I like Twitter. It's a great platform. I think there's a lot of people out there who just like project or they're trying to be like, yo, I'm the Don and like, I'm the guy with all the bitches and like. I'm
You
the
see a lot of
guy.
that, don't you? I think that's the Tate. I think that's the Tate effect. That though.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't like that. That's not my vibe. Like I'm the opposite of that. I'm more like, hey, look, just find someone that you genuinely enjoy spending time with, and then like just keep it offline. Like I think that's that's kind of it. But I think to answer your question, I just like to see authentic content. Like I don't really have one or two creators that I study. I just look at that like explore page, the explore feed, like who's popping up, who catches my eyes. Like if I see someone consistently catching my eye, I might check him out a bit more. But I just look, rather than for content creators, I'll just look for content pieces that really stand out to me.
Change gears a little bit. How important? You mentioned your fiance there. 7 years, did you say?
5.
How important? 5. How important is having that stable relationship? That structure is especially when you start making money. Is that massive for you?
For me, it's big. Like it's something I'm very like sort of proud of and like grateful for, because obviously like when you go through a relationship, it's like building a business. It's not going to be easy, right? There's going to be bumps. There's going to be like moments where both you want to just bounce. And I feel a lot of people are just like too weak to like, especially guys, I feel, to go and admit like, oh, hey, I'm wrong, or maybe I need to, like work on stuff. Like for me, for example, a big thing was like the whole like getting engaged stuff. It was the point of like, here in the UK, people date for 2 years, they get bloody married. In Switzerland, like they date for 15 years, right? And so having that thing of like eventually having to sit myself down and being like, okay, I'm clearly sort of disappointing my partner by not proposing. Why am I not proposing? And then realizing like, oh, I'm actually having like personal, like internal, like small issues that I'm not working through, which prohibit me from like
Like what? What's an example of that?
it was almost like the fear of like, am I missing out on something? Or like, oh, am I what's it called? Like, am I ready for this? And then eventually I realized, okay, if I was to go and like know that my last day is tomorrow, or like, I've died in a week, would I want to go and spend it with my girlfriend, or would I rather go out and like, chat to a bunch of hoes? And I was like, no, I actually would want to be with my girlfriend. And like at that point when I clicked, and I was like, okay, so I'm basically just being a pussy, and I don't want to go make the jump in the leap because whatever goes on in my head. And I think that's when I like kind of clicked, and I went, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna go and look at rings, buy one, and plan a nice proposal.
How much pressure did the fiance put on you to get down on one knee?
It was at one point, it was a lot,
Yeah.
and that's really when it pushed me away. But for me, we always worked on communication, because we were both like, she's not like, she's very smart, and she actually has like some emotional intelligence. So I was like, almost like, hey, look, we need to communicate. And right now, what I'm trying to communicate is the more you ask me for it, the less I'm going to be interested in it. Because as a guy, you don't like to be told what to do,
Agreed.
right?
Yeah.
And then she really kind of backed off, which was amazing of her, and I valued that a lot. Even though it wasn't easy, because all her friends would ask her about it. But then when she backed off, and I kind of started like, asking myself, I came up with it, and then I, proposed. It was great. But I think to answer your question, the best thing for me now as well, with having built a business and scaling it, is I never need to go and ask or question the reasons why we're together. Like I know a lot of like the people I know, half that is issue for me for the money. Like I know that she was with me when I was a scrappy tennis player, and basically was struggling even to get on in the lineup in the States. She was with me when I was chasing some lost business dream, and she's still with me now. Now she gets to enjoy some of the fruits of like
Nice.
us being together for that long. But it's kind of cool because I always knew that like even now I'm fully transparent in terms of she asks me how much I make. I'll happily tell her. But she doesn't really care. She's just like, she'll ask us, hey, are you okay? Like, I know we just moved, like, are you okay money-wise and stuff? I think it's just, like, stuff like that for me is nice because it also puts my mind at ease. I don't like, when I go out, I don't need to worry about like, oh yeah, like I need to go and like hook up with someone or like I need to do all this wild stuff. I just know like, I have someone at home. Like I can just focus on like having a great time with the boys and like, just chilling. And so that's something I enjoy.
Is there any points where you find it a bit challenging? Because I found with my girlfriend, we live an hour and a bit away from each other. We only really see each other on a weekend. Sometimes I see it as a distraction, especially when I'm wanting to put work in, or if I could potentially spend my time on a weekend doing more editing or doing more creating. And we see each other every single weekend, but I can't really say that to her. I can't really say, we need a weekend off this weekend.
It's tough. We've had a lot of arguments about it, but also we had a long distance relationship where we met in the States. She went back during COVID because she finished. I had some masters to do. She was like finished her bachelor's and then did masters in the UK. So for about 9 months, we did like long distance where we're in 8 hours apart, like 8-hour time zone difference. And then I'm working the business and like hardly have time. It's obviously challenging. Even now, 2 weeks I'm in Switzerland, she's here. I just always find it's like communication. Like if I have a big project, like for example, we launched a new client and, I knew that I had to go and pull a long one. I was like, hey, look, like, I just need to tell you, I won't have time to go and do the cuddles and the movie nights because I need to go and launch this. However, let's go and have a date night on Friday. Or like, hey, let's go, for example, I'm flying back to Switzerland tomorrow. I was like, hey, look, this Wednesday, let's go and sit together and let's go have dinner together. I'll finish work at this time. We'll have dinner together. We'll play paddle. We'll do something afterwards. I will not work. And I think doing that has allowed me, it has been really good because it creates a balance. Because sometimes just doing work is bad too. Like my business partner, for example, he's like all work, no fun. I'm almost like, and again, I'm not trying to say this like badly, but I'm training him right now or trying to pushing him to like, hey, take a day off. Because sometimes when you just work, you just fall in the monotony and you actually get less productive. Yeah. Whereas for me, that's actually a great balancer because sometimes she's like, you're working a bit too much. And if I look at it and I try to be rational about it, I'm like, yeah, I'm working a lot, but like at 60% efficiency, I might actually just take a short-term loss and actually make sure that like she knows that she has her priority time and like we actually spend quality time together.
Recharge.
So that I actually feel recharged. And then, when I have my work horse time, I'm very dialed in.
To dissect that a little bit deeper, when you're launching the project there and you're immersed, you're in deep work, you're focused, you like you say, you're trying to keep your phone to one side. Are you texting a lot? Like what's the deal with that? Are you a big texter? Can people access you easy?
No, I try like, I mean, when you guys reached out to me, like, I don't know, you had to follow up like twice because I'm just so bad at texting back, especially on Twitter. Twitter sucks. But for me.
So just a lesson from this, should I set my mobile number earlier?
No, but it's actually good.
Okay.
Yeah, but I honestly just, because I was just like in such a hush. Once I respond, it's good. But like until you get someone to respond, it's hard. I try to, yes, I give access to people, but it just has to be like, again, needs to be earned or needs to be like mutually beneficial. Like usually if somebody's like, hey, I think it would be great if I could edit your videos and charge you this much money. I'm like, yeah, don't even bother. But to answer your question, I'm not like a huge texter anymore. I used to be. Like I have like 4 people. Like my dad, he gets a daily text. My business partner, obviously all the people in the business, but on a personal level, I have like a few friends, a few business associates, and then like my fiance that I text to. But I try to like minimize that stuff and just have like certain time periods where I respond to stuff.
That makes sense. Switzerland. Talk to me about this as a country. What's it like?
It's like London where you don't get your arm chopped off for a watch.
Right.
You don't have homeless people lying around, and you actually have people who are happy. So it kind of like, to me, it's interesting because it's like kind of the best of both worlds. It's very safe. You know, if you have a knife crime happening in Switzerland, it's like a 5-day exposure on national TV, and then a year later they make like a recap of how treacherous it was. It's economically it's pretty good in terms of like minimum wage is like 40-50 grand a year, and like obviously like healthcare, like all that stuff is pretty good. Like it's really nice. Taxes are reasonable too, which I quite enjoy.
How reasonable?
Like I think I pay across everything like 12% across business and personal.
Just before, I want you to carry on with your story there. So UK, what do you think to their tax code?
I think it's rubbish.
Yeah.
Like I just think like the whole UK, the way it's ran and stuff, I think it's honestly like it really screws over the working class, and that pisses me off the most, because I think like obviously the whole libtards, oh, tax the rich is really retarded in the first
The
place.
rich will just move.
Yeah, because they'll just move.
Yeah.
I'll see ya. We'll do like resident non-domicile. Like when I move here for like a year, I'll be resident non-domicile. I don't need your healthcare. Thank you very much. Like I think that whole like, oh, you pay this much taxes so you can have healthcare when you get sick by a virus that we've probably like put onto you. Like I just think that whole aspect to me is really weird. But yeah, it's very different. Like in Switzerland, I think also even politics, like
More conservative.
it's different because we have the way our thing, we don't have one big dog. We have like 7 people that are like a consortium, and they'll just argue with each other because they all have different political views. So it's always very like level-headed, right? They don't make like crazy like, oh yeah, like we adopt 17 genders yesterday, or like they don't make these crazy decisions because it's split, right? Like in the States, it's very like level-headed. So they'll make some people which are like, oh, that's a dumb decision, but it'll be equal on both sides. So I think it's very balanced, and I think that's one thing I like, because you can't really be dominated by the government, because they're split into 3 different parties almost, the whole 7 people consortium. So there'll always be like some arguments and you know, compromises.
Are you going to set up home there then? Is that the goal?
I think over time, yeah, we'll definitely move there. That's a goal. I just think it's like, to me, and not to make this about like, you know, race or like anything discrimination, I just personally wouldn't like my kids go to school in England and be like, oh, walk one, brother. How you doing, bruv? Like if my kid came home, I would just be like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, just because I feel like there's a lot of like just bad antics that are being propelled right now. And, you know, I think the problem starts is that a lot of people that are like, you know, immigrants that come into here, which look for a second chance, they just get put into like the shithousery places. And so naturally, if they want to do a living, they almost got to resort to like doing something illegal because they don't get any chances. And then that just creates a whole dynamic, which I think is really negative.
It's actually changed a little bit now. They now put them in 3- and 4-star hotels. And
We've got a problem around here at the minute. There's all in these hotels.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like that's just the one thing that I'd picked up on when I was
think
speaking
it
to
probably
people.
started like that, and then they just started giving them free meals a day in a hotel. It's all changed now, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole.
I think we got shadow banned on his last post.
Yeah. But one question I will have, and I do not want to go down the rabbit hole, but you just mentioned there about these mixed genders. You don't have your government talking about all this stuff. I'm presuming that doesn't even really exist where you are.
It does and it doesn't, but like it's just not as big, you know. Like I remember in California, I got into massive trouble because we had like these calls with all the coaching stuff during COVID, and so like I didn't even know this existed, right? And so they're like, oh hey, my name's Catherine, like she, her, and someone came out like, oh, I'm Jeremy, and then someone was like, what are your pronouns? And I was like, Mister, and then they were like, no, are you like he, him, she? Like I was like, what? So I was like really confused. And so midway through, this one person made like a comment, and I was like, oh, I really agree with Catherine's point. I think she made a great like, you know, argument for this. And like this person just went and was like, excuse me, it's they, them. And like fully cool. Like
they, them.
She's like, I'm they, them. I'm like, and so I wasn't muted. I was like,
Fish at them. Remember that?
yeah, and I was like, what the fuck? And so obviously like 70 coaches, and I'm like an assistant, like somewhere
I just
down
left
here.
room, mate. I think I just left room.
No, it was like on Zoom, and I wasn't muted, so I was like, what the fuck? And so I got an email that day and was like, could you please come in so we could have like a conversation about the importance of adapting this? Now, long story short, like I don't think it's bad if somebody feels that certain way. I think that's certainly valid, and I respect that. You know, same if somebody wants to be vegan, great. You know, chew on the broccoli, chew on the salad.
Don't shove
that's
it down
cool.
my throat, though.
The one thing is I don't need it to be propelled down their throats. And the biggest issue that I kind of see is that I had this conversation the other day because my girlfriend works in like education. She like works with kids who have like autism, who struggle with like some stuff like that. And like the hard part that I find is like they're putting the dress code on people in the UK, which I actually think is cool because I think gives people from low housing income less of like that bully effect. But when I said about like, well, it doesn't allow them to, you know, it doesn't really allow them to express themselves on a fashion stand, which, you know, there's just pros and cons. And one of the argument was, well, they can't do that because at age, you know, 8 or 10, they don't know how to express themselves fashion-wise, which I think is valid. But if they can't do that, they clearly can't articulate what gender they do or do not associate with. So that propaganda just is absolutely lost.
It's like it's been pushed pretty much now. I saw a video yesterday. Who was it who posted it? Ash White, who's got the Hera clothing brand. He posted a video and it was all these kids dressed in multicolored clothes running under this
I saw that
rainbow.
Yeah, I
and
saw
it's
it.
like every single kid in this class, 30 years old, was, the best way I can explain it, acting like a drag queen and doing all these dance moves, and like they can push that on them, and that's not their decision whether they're doing that or not. They're doing it, but they can't dress themselves.
I just think, to me, it's gotten too much where we're trying to make everyone feel accommodated, right? Now, I think, you know, like my fiance, she's like, she has a mixed race background, and I've seen I've seen in America as well. I've seen like the race discrimination, and I find that really disgusting. Yeah. But I just feel like there's certain like when it comes to like genders and like letting the 1% outliers go and influence the masses just so the 1% feel accepted, I just feel that a bit troubling. You know, I don't think it should matter like what your race is, where you're from, and all that stuff. I personally don't care about that. But what I do care about is like, if you're just, I feel like I'm an outlier because I identify as a mashed potato and now everyone should do that. I just find that a bit troubling because I think, again, it creates a really soft
Do you think
culture.
that's always been going on, but social media's gave it a voice?
I find social media has amplified it a lot. I see it with my mom, for example. She works as a psychologist, and she obviously said like that, for example, the rates in which kids were like diagnosed with like, let's say, autism, or like, you know, a lot of like the disorders that there are, mental disorders, it's drastically increased because I feel, one, obviously, I think the way society works has like increased those effects, like not spreading, but like kind of affecting people, you know? But at the same time, a lot of parents will push and like be like, yo, my kid has this and this, my kid has this special condition. You know, I have severe ADHD, but my mom was just kind of like, okay, you can do it without the meds. Now, if I had gone on like ADHD, maybe I would have I'd be like, oh yeah, I actually have problems. That alters my behavior. And then maybe or maybe not, somebody would say, oh, you might have like an autistic strain that you might have. And I find that's interesting. It's the same with like weight.
Do you think that, dig into the ADHD thing there, do you think it's because people now want to be labelled with something? Even though like your tendency there with ADHD, if you're unable to focus, you're like a bit like me.
That was honestly like, I feel that was like genetics, just how genetics worked.
Yeah.
Like I think there's definitely a genetical play in there. I feel I'm very like balanced in it. I have like some extreme views, then some like.
We can take this out of the podcast.
No, that's totally fine.
Do you smoke weed?
No, I don't.
No.
I never found interest in it. Like I'm very much anti-drugs. I don't really do microdosing or any of that jazz. I'm very much like, just drink water. I don't drink coffee. Like I'm just like.
Do you take pharmaceutical drugs though?
Nothing. Like when I have like headaches or like I have a really bad hay fever, which like is horrible right now. So I take that. But outside of that, I'm very much like just drink water, try and eat healthy. But even with like on the health stuff, right? I find it very interesting when you look at like back in like the 1990s or something. My dad was saying this. He was like, everyone was just so like skinny, right? And then I think a lot of like, and again, I'm not an expert on it, but I feel like what I can see is like a lot of like big pharma coming in, like a lot of like the, you know, obviously like unorganic food being propelled. It definitely like must affect people in some ways. Because I mean, I just don't really have another explanation, for me at least, as to why obesity seems to be so prevalent. Like
I think access to food as well is different. Like when I'm 34 now, so I lived a large portion of my youth with my grandparents, and like there were no food in the house, so you'd have to walk to the town. She'd only prepare the food for that day. We were very working class, so there weren't access like now. When you have a little bit of money, Uber Eats, fridge is full, food, go drive here, go do this. The access, and if some people haven't got if they're lazy, like you've mentioned in this pod already, and they're not active, then the calorie surplus will happen very much easier, and you're going to gain weight. And I think once weight gets away from someone, if they're lazy and they can't bring it back, like you said with the, did you meant the callousing of the brain to be disciplined, they can't pull that back.
That's fair. I've never thought of it this
I
way.
think access is easy now. That's just all I see. I just think anything you can get quick.
For sure.
Did you ever see that photo? You know, circus acts back in the day, they used to have like midgets and fat people and really tall people, and you could pay and come and see them. There's a picture from, let's say, 60, 70 years ago, and it's some fat guy sat on a thing, and it's like, come and see the world's fattest man. And
He's not that fat.
he's compared to what we've got these days, he's nothing.
That's hilarious.
It's crazy.
People, even fat people, try and blame genes now. I'm not saying there's not a gene that some people will probably gain weight easier, but you
I've
have to
seen-
eat the you have to eat the calories.
Yeah,
and
it's when people say, oh, I'm big boned.
yeah, I'm big bone.
I've seen like I've known like a mother of like one of the tennis players that I know. She had like a serious thing. She would be like not eat, like barely eat anything, and like just not lose weight and like be very big. So I clearly see that works. But I've also seen people who are like,
Yeah, but I'm not saying she's lying there, but
yeah.
you know when they start saying thyroidy, and I get this, as thyroid's definitely a problem and slow metabolism to a degree, to an extent. It's basic science is weight gain. So to me, I just don't see.
I mean, I've seen both the flip side, right? I've seen
Yeah.
the ones who genuinely like try their hardest, but just like seem to be very unlucky. But I've also seen the people who are like, oh, I'm trying really hard, but then it's like chocolates.
Yeah, there's chocolate and nut pillars.
Oh,
And
they're
you
just
find
not
rappers
burning the
everywhere.
calories.
Yeah. Digging. How long have we been talking?
We've done an hour 15 now. What time's your train?
13.50, something like that.
13:50.
13.50, yeah,
Oh,
10
got
to
plenty.
2.
Shoot, we'll wrap it up though, because I think we've got a lot. One question I will ask just for the audience now. So we've talked a fair bit of complexity because we're trying to gain as much knowledge from you as humanly possible. For someone out there who this has resonated with, who wants to make income online, try and break it down for me as simply as possible. How and why they should make that start.
The internet's really changed the game for everyone. When you look at it, is that you can now put stuff online, right? Whether that's just you being funny, whether that is you doing pranks, whether that is you actually sharing stuff that you've learned or gathered in your personal professional life. And you can put that out there for free. And if people resonate with what you're saying, they will follow you. And over time, if you get enough people to go and follow you, they'll want more access to you because they like you, not what you're saying. And so now you can actually sell that. Now, you know, for some people, you know, it has become an outlet where they go and sell their physicality or, you know, the intimacy. For other people, it's become where they sell their knowledge or like their actual like skills, you know, like gardening companies making a ton of money. If you're not using the internet, it's literally changed the game. All companies are moving their attention to the internet, so should you. Whether it's for a job, I mean, I've gotten a $200K a year job offer through the internet. And so, you know, if you want to just focus on finding something that you enjoy doing, talking about it, just documenting your own little journey. If you want to do it with the looks and like, you know, be a model type, just focus on taking cool pictures and creating content. And then be consistent with it and just do it on the side. And then when you get opportunities, you start racking it up. I think it's just a gradual process of like creating content, you know, posting it, seeing what works, what doesn't, repeating what works, cutting out what doesn't, and then doing it over and over again until you hit that thing. And then when you have the opportunity to go in it all in, I would go all in. So I think it's just a matter of like figuring out what you already have and what the market wants and finding that overlap and then just doing more of it.
You're the man. Where can people find out more information about you?
Twitter and Instagram. Instagram at Jeremy Nick Moser. Same on Twitter. And yeah, that's where I'm going to be posting content. I'm doing my best to respond if actually people ask smart questions. That's the biggest thing, right? If you ask smart questions, you get a response. So that's honestly, I would say my superpower is wherever I go. I want to actually finish with this. I was in Miami and we had this networking dinner and there were people in there making anywhere from like 200 all the way to like 4 million a month. And I sat there and I genuinely felt like I was like bottom 5% in terms of income. I ended up the night on like some rooftop bar with the 5 wealthiest individuals. Because one guy was French, I speak French. And so eventually I had one smart question. I asked it to him in French. He was like, yes, not another American dumbass, started speaking to me. All the other guys just sat around and I would just listen and ask one smart question. And they'd answer it and then they'd enjoy the conversations because I would just not be like, hey, can I pick your brain? And so if you want to go and get in a room, you just got to ask smart questions because one, it'll actually give you helpful answers in terms of, oh, this is an answer that actually helps me now take action, or it'll get you in a room where I'm like, oh, this is actually a smart question, and I'll give you resources, and you can start building relationships.
Networking is key.
Yep.
And smart questions is key.
Yep.
I've got so many ideas now for this one podcast, bro. Thank you very much.
Send him an invoice. Appreciate the time.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Had nothing playing on me, nigga, 4 chains on me. I ain't tripping about that hoe, nigga, she came on me. I got a bitch from the west, she a sucker nigga soft. Bitch from the east, she a fucking nigga dog. Still playing with that raw, even though I got a deal. Had to get up out your city, I just got a nigga killed. Pause, I'm lying, kinda still sipping out the final. Rossi Cotton and no partners, I want 4-2 for each. Niggas up blue for free, that's my nigga, come and kick it. Mr. Stiller, sir, the city, I'm the reason it's some chicken. Why the fuck you in the kitchen trying to turn one? The air quit pulling on the blender before you burn something. Baby say she want a real